Selenium WebDriver and Java training by 5 Elements Learning. Today we are going to talk about the concept of TestNG as a framework, and we will see how we can use it with Selenium. So we have learned in the yesterday's session about the different types of frameworks which can be created over Selenium: modular, data-driven, hybrid, and keyword-driven. And we also have discussed about two unit test frameworks which can be integrated with Selenium: JUnit and TestNG. So we have some knowledge on JUnit, we have used it, and now we will learn how we can use TestNG with the Selenium. So TestNG have to be installed by going to install new software and providing this URL. When you type in this URL, you will get the TestNG plugin to be installed to the Eclipse. Once that is installed, you can go ahead and create the TestNG test on your systems. Now, a TestNG test, when we create it, also asks us to create a testng.xml file. Okay, so whenever we create a new TestNG test, it asks us to create a testng.xml file because it doesn't exist otherwise. So what is a testng XML file? A testng XML file is a build XML file which contains information about the test suite, test cases, which has to be executed. So it contains basically the information about the test suite which has to be executed, and the hierarchy which the TestNG follows is suite contains test, contains classes. Let me just show it to you. 1 second. So you have suite, test, group, class, and method. This is the hierarchy which a TestNG test follows, and within the XML, this is how the information is available. The suite can contain test information, the test can contain groups information, the group can contain class information, and the class can contain method information for execution. So this is the hierarchy which the TestNG XML file follows, or the TestNG test follows. Now, whenever we are going to create a TestNG test, we can use some annotations. So the annotations which are available, basic annotations which are available to us to use in the TestNG test are before suite, after suite, before test, after test, before class, after class, before group, after group, before method, after method. So before suite will do what? It will run all the tests in the, before any test suite execution will start, it will run the code within it. After will run after the all tests within the suite have executed. Okay. Similarly, before test, after test, before group, after group. So before method will run before each test method, after method will run after each test method. Before class will run before the first test method in the current class, and after class will run after all the tests within a class has been executed, then the after class will run. So whatever code we have written down within these annotations will get executed. So you can see there is a better annotation control, better configuration control, and a lot of annotations available for TestNG which were not available in JUnit. So it is comparatively richer. Now, for the same scenario of login logout, I am going to write down a TestNG test. Okay. So this is our login scenario. We have to import the test ng annotations, okay, not the JUnit one. So we say org.testng.annotations, whichever we are using in our test, along with the Selenium files, okay. So after you have understood the import statements, you have to right click on the src and or right click on your package wherever you want to create a file. Here, when you say right click, you find a node of testng just above properties. Look at the second last entry in the menu item. You have testng, you select create testng class. When you do that, it will open a pop-up window. Here, you can provide the name of your class. For example, you can say demo testng. Then you can choose the method which you want for it to be available and provide the path to the testng XML file. Okay, you click on finish. What this will do is it will create a new testng class and it will create a testng XML file. This is the first thing which we have to do when we are creating a testng test. So as it creates a testng XML file, you can go to its source to have a look at the XML document. Here, okay, where we have got the class information included about which particular class is to be tested, and here we have got our demo testng. Now in the before method and after method we will provide our variable declarations and an after method cleanup, and inside the test our actual scenario. So I'm going to take up this demo login now and show it to you. Within the before method, you initialize your variables, you set up your driver object, and you will be setting up the path to your Gecko driver. And in the test annotation, you are actually going to write down the steps to test the application at hand. Okay. Then in the after, you are going to perform the cleanup operations. Now, let me just give path to the Gecko driver. Now, since I want to execute this test, I have to make an entry of this test in the test.ng XML file. So let's go and open the test.ng XML file and ensure that the name provided in here is of that test case. So we say demo login. Okay. Now, as I have told you that this is a build XML file and it is executable. So I'm going to click the play icon in here to execute this XML file. So as the application has opened, it will go ahead and perform the actions required on the application, which are same. The login logout scenario, which is exactly the same, will be performed, but this time the execution is happening using the test.ng engine and not the Java or the JUnit engine. Okay, that's the major difference when we are executing the test using test.ng. Okay. So after this test will execute, I will show you that when the test execution happens in the test.ng test, it basically, what it does is it generates some default test reports, which again is a very good feature of the test.ng test, and it allows us to understand the execution health of our test suite. Okay, now once the test is executed, go ahead and refresh the SRC folder, and here you will find out, go ahead and refresh the project, and when you do so, you will find a test-output folder available to you now. Expand it. Here inside it you have got few HTML files. Let's click on them. So when I click on index.html, it will open a report HTML file where it tells me that there was one method and one got failed, and the failed method name is test login because it is unable to locate an element continue within a given time. Similarly, when I click on this emailable report, it will open another report format for the same test case scenario. It tells me that it took this much time to execute the test. There was one test, one method available, and the method failed because of this reason. Similarly, inside the suite, there is a test.html available, which has got, I like the format of this. It talks about the date, time, and the method which failed within a particular test case. So these three files are available to us by default with every test-ng execution. Is this clear? Is this helpful? So such features are not available in the JUnit. So you get a ready inbuilt reporting feature with the test-ng. Okay. Now let's say you want to add more than one test case in your class. What would you do? To add more than one test case in our class, we are going to make an entry of that within the test.ng XML file. So let's say I want to execute another test case. And this time I want to use a bad username or a password. Now here I'm going to create an entry of this particular test case as well in my test.ng XML file. So you copy this class information, create a node, and tell that the second test case is, or the class which you want to execute is this. Similarly, I can go ahead and create more classes within it. That's not an issue. So you can click on this play icon for the execution to start. So it will execute two test cases. Ideally, one should pass and one should fail. So one has executed. This is the second test case and it will fail. So ideally the error which will get is it will time out because it is not able to identify the log of link within a given time set. So as the execution is over, let's have a look at the output files. So here can you see two entries, one green, one red, and you can then have a look at that why the test failed, because it was unable to locate element log of. Okay. Similarly, you can have a look at the test.html within the suite. It tells us about a test case passed and a test case failed and a total time of execution, etc. Is this clear? This reports how we can add more than one class and run it in a suite in the test.ng XML file. Any questions? Okay. Now moving on to the next concept, we will learn about how we can parameterize a test.ng test. Now to parameterize a test.ng test, there are two approaches. One is using the parameter annotations within the test.ng XML file, and the another is uh, using a data provider. So we'll first see usage of a parameter annotation to pass the data to our test case. So to create the parameter annotation before the method where we are wanting the data to be passed as a uh, parameter, we use @parameters followed by a variable name. This variable name is then used within the test case method. For example, let me show you. In this program called browser, we have got a parameter annotation being used in the before method, which passes browser and URL. So if the URL passed to it is IE, okay, sorry, if the browser passed to it is IE, then it will go and launch the IE driver and run the test case on IE. But if the browser passed to it as Firefox, it will open the Firefox browser and run it. Okay. So here let's see how we can call this particular test case, and here we will be passing the values for this parameter annotation. Another thing, the parameter annotations can be used with any of the other annotations like before test or after. That's not the issue. So if it is using the IE, then it is going to run for the IE driver. If not, it will run for the Firefox. So providing the path. Okay, now to pass these annotations, we'll be creating an entry within the test.ng XML file where we will be passing the values for the parameter annotation. Okay, so let me show you this. Also, I'm just going to run one test case called as call browser. So you can pass as many parameters as you have available. So these are the information passed to my test. Now let's run the program. So depending upon which browser was passed, that particular browser got invoked, okay, for execution. And my test will get executed. I need to just ensure that I have got appropriate wait times available, otherwise the test fails. You should know that ideally we should be using the WebDriver wait, okay? That is more helpful than introducing waits like this. So let me execute it one more time. Now you can go ahead and have a look at your files. It is pass, shows it is pass, okay? So this is an example of passing the parameters to the test ng and data driving our scenarios. But this is generally used to pass global variables or configuration variables, okay? This is mainly helpful in situations where you want to pass some information which will be relevant to all the test cases within the test suite, and these are simple variables, okay? So parameter annotation is mainly helpful to create global variables, environment variables, okay? Now we will have a look at data provider. Data provider is another way to data drive our test cases. In here, we basically create a 2D array structure and pass the data to the underlying method using it. Okay, so data provider basically help us create a 2D array data structure, and we can pass that data to the underlying method using the data provider annotation. So let's have a look at the data provider annotation. For that we will take a small program. In this particular program, I am going to find out whether a given number is prime or not. Okay, so for that I have created a class called as prime number checker, which has got only one method, validate, which takes an input as a number, and it finds out if the number is prime you return true, else you return false. What is a prime number? A number which is only divisible by itself and no other number. So we have used the logic to find out whether a given number is prime or not by dividing it with all numbers less than half of it. Okay. So if for each any of them it divides and the mod is 0, then we return false, otherwise we return true. So that's how we have a method which checks whether a given number is prime or not, and accordingly it returns a true or a false value. Now within our class, we create an object of prime number checker, and here we have created our data provider annotation. Now understand that the data provider annotation will contain a 2D array object. So the return value associated with this annotation is a 2D array object. It contains data in the following format: number followed by expected output, number followed by expected output. So 19 expected output is true, 23 expected output is false. So is 2 a prime number? Yes. Is 6 a prime number? No. So this is fine, this is fine. 19 is a prime number? Yes, this is fine. 22 is a prime number? No. So this is will fail. 23 is a prime number? Yes, but it is given expected as false. Will not match the actual, so it will also fail. So this is our data provider annotation created. Now, when we associate a data provider with a particular method of the test, you have to understand that the test will iterate as many times as many rows are available within that data provider. Secondly, I can have more than one test node and I can have more than one data provider node within the same program. So here in the @test, we pass that data provider is equal to test1, and we say that it accepts the input arguments as input number and boolean expected result, which is the value associated in here. And then we simply call the method whether expected result is asserted to prime number checker dot validate input number or not. So every number is passed to the prime number checker method, and then correspondingly actual result is returned, which is matched to the expected result. So let's have a look at this execution. So we provide the name of the class to be executed. So as we run this program, we will find the output as total test run 5, failure 2. Let's have a look at the output. This is the output. So 2 sets failed and 3 have passed. Is this clear how we have used the data provider annotation? So have a look at the program again. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Any questions? So as we have used this in a very simple program, let us talk about, let's say I want to pick up the data from the database and then pass it to my test scenario, and I want to use the data provider annotation for it. Can you think and tell me where each step will be put, in which annotation the steps will be put? I want to pick the data from the database and I want to data drive my test case of test-ng. So the scenario is, you want to pick the login credentials from the database and use the data provider annotation in the test-ng. So we know how to talk to database. Do you remember creating connection object, statement object, then result set, and then executing the while loop and fetching all the column informations? In the java.sql package you have imported, you have created all these methods to talk to the database. Do you remember that? So within the data provider annotation, we will write down the code to talk to database and create our 2D array having username and password. Okay, so the 2D array will have as many rows as many entries are available within the database. Then in the test method we will pass the data associated with the data provider. That's it. It's as simple as it is. So here have a look at the code within the data provider annotation. Okay, you create that, it will create an object called as login data. You create this connection object, result set, etc. You connect to a database which is supposed to have the login info table, and you execute the query to fetch the username and password associated or within the database. Once you run the query, you store this information fetched within the login 2D array, and that's it. Then you pass the data provider annotation to the test, and it says it is taking input argument username string and string user and string password. So wherever username is required, you pass it as user and then password. Okay. That's it. So when you execute this program, it will basically first talk to the database. Within the data provider annotation, you have written the code to talk to the database and fetch the username and password data and create a 2D array out of it. So it will run the as many times as many rows are there and create this data provider annotation. Then you associate this data provider annotation with the method. So the method will execute with as many times as many rows are available within the data provider annotation for some pass and some fail scenarios for the registered user. Sorry, for the login logout. Is this clear how we use the data provider annotation, talk to the database and automate our scenario? So for some it is passing, for some it is failing. So once the execution is over, you can go ahead and have a look at the result file created and find out that for which particular details or data the execution got failed. Okay? And for which particular data set the execution got passed. Make sense? Is this clear how we can use data provider annotation and fetch data from the database and run our program? So similarly, you can read from a CSV file, you can read data from a text file or the database. I have not yet told you about Excel sheet, but we will soon do it, and then you can parameterize the test by passing the data from your Excel sheet as well. Next, we are going to learn how we can capture the screenshots during the execution of our test. For that, there is a class available called as take screenshot. Sorry, it's an interface. There's an interface available called as take screenshot, which has got a method called as get screenshot as. We are going to use it to capture the screenshot at the time of passing or failing of the test. So here, this program, everything is same except that we will be adding a few lines for the screenshot. So if in case the login is successful, if the page contains my account information, then what we will be doing is we will be creating a file object by using the interface take screenshot and associate it with the driver object and use the method get screenshot as. Okay, so these are the three lines which we have added. Let's have a look at them. In the first line, we are basically creating a file object and calling it as screenshot, which is basically created by using the interface take screenshot, passing the driver, associating with the driver, and using the method get screenshot as. And the output should be of type file. Then we create a file name and we copy this particular screenshot to that particular file name to be used. So take screenshot, as I have told you, is an interface available to us which has got a method called as get screenshot as. So when I execute this program, You are going to pick the data from the database, run your test case and take screenshot as well. So as the execution is over, if you have a look at the folder, let me just refresh it, you will find the images captured. This is the image for the valid username. This is the image for the invalid username. So you have got the images or the screenshots captured with the execution. Is this clear? Is this clear? Any questions? So now we are going to talk about TestNG custom reporting. This is the last topic for today. It will take me another 10 minutes to talk about it. So custom reporting is generally a feature which is used by advanced users, and what custom reporting helps us achieve is you have seen that by default there are three kinds of report which are generated by TestNG during the execution time. If we want to modify and create a report according to our requirements, I can do so. For that, the TestNG XML file allows us to use its classes called as iReporter and iTest Listener. So these are two interfaces which are available to us, okay, which allows us to create custom reports with the TestNG. So iTest Listener allows us to fetch runtime information, whereas iReporter has got only one method called as generate report. The purpose of iReporter is to provide us information after the execution is over. Now I hope you guys remember that whenever you are implementing an interface for your class, you have to implement all the methods available within the interface. To avoid that, there is a class called as test listener adapter created for the interface iTest listener. The purpose of this class is to allow us to use only those methods which we may need. So you can implement iReporter and extend test listener adapter to generate your own custom reporting. So what exactly are some of the methods available with test listener adapter? So some of the methods available are get all pass test, get fail test, get skip test. So it will get you the all pass test, failed or skip test during the execution. What you want to do on the start of a test case execution, what you want to do on the finish of a test case execution, on test failure, on test skipped, on test success. So all these events during the time of execution we can capture and fetch information from it. iReporter, as told you guys, has only one method called as generate report, where within a suite we have got information for test cases. So iSuite contain information about test cases. The test cases further contain information about classes, groups, and method. Okay. So I've created a class called as custom report. Here I've got a method called as start HTML page, which takes an argument a file object, and here I've written down the start HTML component. Okay. Then I have another method called as end HTML, where I am closing the HTML document. Now look at this particular class. It says I extend test listener adapter and implement iReporter. So I have to provide body to the generate report method. Within it, I basically create a new file and I start writing information in the file. So I start with the HTML document. Then for every suit, fetch the results. For every suit result, fetch the test context. Find out all the pass test, fail test and skip test within the suit. Okay. So it will fetch you the size, that is the count of pass test, fail test and skip test within a suit, and print that information within the custom report file. Now to execute a program with custom report, I add a listener annotation to my testng XML file and I include the classes I want to execute, for which the custom report as well will be generated beside the three default reports. So let's click on the play icon and allow this execution to happen. For the execution to happen, we have to ensure that we have added the Gecko driver information. So your execution will happen So as the execution gets completed for the 3 different test case scenarios within our test suite, we will also be able to get a output.html file besides the 3 default file available to us. Okay, so there will also be an output.html file available to us which we can see and which has been generated by us only. So this is the output.html available. It talks about that the report is generated on a given timestamp. Who has generated this report? So for example, you can provide your company information in here and a table is created. Okay, so how many tests are passed for the suit, how many are failed, and how many are skipped. So you can write down such information and generate your own custom reports. You can put in your organization logo, etc., and all that stuff. With that, we have come to end of the discussion on TestNG framework. As an assignment, you are required to um, create the test in TestNG framework for the byproduct. Try to fetch the information from the database, okay, and then automate the scenario. That's the only assignment given to you guys. Any questions? So valid user, valid password, available product, valid user, valid password, unavailable product, invalid user. So these are the 3 data sets using which I want you to create a byproduct scenario using the testng XML file. Your second question is find out how we can run our test in parallel using testng. And your third question is find out how can we use groups to group together our testng test during execution. So you'll find this information in the documentation section and you can use it. Okay. So with that, we have come to end of today's session. I will see you all then next week. I will be sending out the webinar joining details. Okay. And next week is our last week. So please, whatever assignments you guys have done, send it across for evaluation. Thank you so much for your time today. See you all next week. Bye everyone.